Today I'm gonna see if I can get the diff centered and then actually make some brackets and mount the diff, or at least get the diff mount tacked in to the subframe. That's kind of what I'm working on today. In order to get the diff to actually fit up inside the subframe, I had to cut off the original mounting horns. So coming up with a new way to mount the diff, I decided to just build a plate that would bolt in to the top bolts of the differential, and then I can make my mounts off of that. So I just used some foam board, made a rough template, and then transferred that onto some steel, cut the steel out, ground it down, and then test fit it until I had the perfect contour to fit the diff. Marked my holes, drilled the holes, and then stuck the bolts in to make sure that they actually fit. So now that I have that done, I totally have it cockeyed. Pretty majorly. From the back you can see a whole lot easier that it's pretty cockeyed. That sucks. Whatever. With that plate cut out, I needed to find the center of the subframe, and so using the two lateral link bolts that you can use to adjust camber, it was right around 11.5 inches between the two bolts, so I just took the center of that, marked it, and then used a straight edge and marked all the way up the subframe. So here's my center, measured from this edge here over, and then the same thing over here over. So that's going to be my center line. I'm going to line up with the center line I drew on the subframe, and then there is a good like 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of play I can have as far as if I'm off a little bit, because the CV joints can compress and things like that to be able to center it perfectly. But since I'm using two passenger side axles, I should be set. I'm planning on doing a similar style of just studs. The subframe is just stamped steel that's welded together, and you can't bolt through that without crushing it. And so I drilled a couple holes in the subframe, and I can run this piece of DOM steel tubing through it and then bolt between it, and it won't crush. So my thinking was just to find the center line of everything and line up the centers and then weld it in place. After positioning the differential where I needed it to be, I went ahead and bolted a flat plate with a hole drilled in it to the diff, and then boxed that plate into the subframe. I was going to make a mount similar to the Subaru mount that had bushings on both sides, and it would just kind of rest up underneath there. But I decided to just weld a box onto the subframe with a fixed nut in the box. Worked out perfect. With the forward mount done, I pulled the diff out and finished final welding on everything else. The backside I still needed to clean up and grind down so I could get some good penetration on it and some good welds. I also went ahead and welded a plate over the rear hole that used to be the original Subaru diff mount. With that forward mount finished, I went ahead and threw the diff back in and mocked up my rear mount. Okay, so here we are. As far as the subframe goes, it's mounted. So here, check out these mounts that I did. So I was going to just do rods basically like that, and then have a bolt come through and have studs basically that are extended. And I was like, nah, that's super ghetto. Why don't I just make real mounts? So this, since they're boxed, is going to be way stronger, and there's way more mounting surface. Anyway, it's the way to do it. These are only tacked for right now because I need to put this in the car and make sure that the pinion angle is correct before I fully weld these. The pinion angle is the angle of this guy here, right here, and that just needs to be at the right angle so it can meet the drive shaft, and have the right angle so it can spin for real. Because if it's like way off and the drive shaft comes on, you could have issues binding and things like that.
So how do you figure out what the right angle is?
You look at what the angle is from the Subaru one. And basically the best thing it's perpendicular to the ground, basically. And so it might be a little trickier since the car is it's not level, but I'll just take a reading off of something that is perpendicular to the ride height kind of thing, and just make it like that. I think it's 1 or 2 degrees off of level, but I gotta do more research on that to figure that out. I know more about pinion angle on a solid axle, like on a truck, than I do about pinion angle on a IRS. So basically, I'm just gonna try and mimic whatever the Subaru one was, because I figure that'll be good enough. So that car is always eating up tires in the back, and this is why.
Is it not supposed to move like that?
Look at this one.
Oh. Why does it do that?
The bushing is blown on both sides.
Whoa.
That's also why it creaks. Like there is no bushing anymore. It's just metal to metal, and that's why we could never get the rear aligned properly, and it always had camber, and that's why it was garbage, basically, because of those guys. So I'm torn right now between just buying new ones. I need to check pricing and see if it's worth it, or just making my own. And I would like to make my own that are adjustable, because then I could use these to adjust camber. But I might just buy stock ones and make new ones later so that I can get it done quicker. But that's where I'm at right now. I have one axle in, and yeah, the one other thing I was worried about was the boot, with it clearing all of this suspension work, and it totally does. No issues with anything right there. So that's a major plus. So yeah, I'm gonna get this back in the car this weekend. Today I'm just gonna prep it more so than I have before, and so I'm really gonna try and get rid of most of all the rust. And then I have this Rust-Oleum like rust dissolver stuff. It just turns the rust into iron, so it's inert and won't keep rusting. Now that the subframe has some custom things done to it, I want the subframe to be solid, and I don't really care about the chassis because I can switch the subframe between a few different chassis. Yeah. On the back side, so voila. No jack, and it's in there, so it's mounted for real. I mean, mounted for real, like I was saying. But I also went ahead and plated that hole that I cut out that had the original Subaru bushings in it,
and it turned out pretty good.
This part of it was really, there were so many different ways I could do it, as far as what diff I wanted to use, how I wanted to mount the diff, if I wanted to use the stock rear diff cover, if I wanted to use a totally clean rear cover, if I wanted to use like a Camaro rear cover that has bolts out. Anyway, there's a bunch of different ways that I could go about doing it, and this is just the one I chose. And I'm pretty happy with it. I'm still going to brace this a little bit and cut off the excess. But this little bit of fabrication, there's so many different ways to go about it. It's taking me longer. Anyway, so going to prep this, get it rust removed, and then I'll paint it before I throw it back in this weekend.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Got 2% battery.
Okay, I guess that means it's over. Because that's what you do when you're stepping up the game. Even when it sets you back. Hopefully this is only going to take me a day to fix. We'll see. Also thinking about cutting my beard off, because there's cowlicks in my beard and it makes it swoosh funny, as seen here. Oh, that's weird. You can see my jawline. Anyway, that's what I'm doing today.